Hello and welcome to a special edition of Oxwide in which we visit our teams across the southwest of the country. But before we start, I'd like to introduce myself and tell you a little bit more about me. My name is Aisling Thompson and I recently joined Oxley's as the Service Director for Forensics and Offender Healthcare. I've worked in the NHS for over 20 years in a variety of operational and commissioning roles, and I'm delighted to be working with colleagues in the southwest. First up, we take a trip to Dorset, where we speak to the healthcare staff working at the Verne. Over to Lisa Tan.
We've come to the Isle of Portland to visit our colleagues in the Verne and find out how they're getting on working in our prison.
The Verne is a historic building under English heritage, I believe it is. It's an old fort that was built by conscripts in the 1800s as part of the defences against Napoleon. It's an amazing building. It's an absolute thrill to work here. The architecture, the grounds, it really is a pleasure. However, the issues that it presents for us is it's not a purpose-built prison, and we have to make the most out of the accommodation and the buildings that we've been provided. It has 608 men currently. People convicted of sexual offences is our population, and as such, we have quite an elderly population here.
The care that goes on at the Verne wouldn't necessarily be the same as what you get in a general population prison. Due to their elderly nature, they have the elderly medical issues, the heart problems, the blood pressure problems. You've got people that have had strokes that have come in and mobility issues. So it's a total different way for the prison to have to think to get people on locate flat due to their mobility, the amount of medications that people are on and needing those elderly and medical medication, really.
We face different challenges to most prisons where the focus is on mental health. Ours is generally on physical health. We have a lot of comorbidities, a lot more hospital escorts, emergency escorts, and our bed watches tend to be for a longer period. The Verne is a very unique prison. The regime is very open. The prison will bend over backwards to provide association time as much as possible. So I think when prisoners come here, they are quite surprised by the amount of freedom they have to move through the grounds. It means that they're spending a lot of time outside, which is great for their health and well-being. There's a lot of walking that they can do, and the association certainly keeps their minds busy as well. So, as I say, when they come here, it's a breath of fresh air for them. The Verne has a huge community feel. The prisoners themselves form a part of a community, and they respect each other, they respect the grounds. It's a very relaxed atmosphere in here. The officers have a really positive relationship with the prisoners, and I think that then creates a calm and enjoyable workplace for everybody.
How do you find it working in pharmacy in prisons?
So I really enjoy it. I've worked in community pharmacy as well. And I would choose prison pharmacy any day over community pharmacy. There's a wide range of activities that we do. The team are lovely that I work with. So yeah, I really enjoy it.
So what was your pathway into prison work?
So my path, I was at the hospital working and doing my training. I came to prison just as a HCA, just for some extra cash being a student. And I enjoyed it so much that when I actually qualified, I took a job here as a qualified nurse.
When I looked into the trust, I saw that it has recently won a Sunday Times award for being the #1 best employer. I believe that's across all NHS trusts. And I have come from a trust who really looked after their staff, and that is really important to me. So I wanted to move not just for the job, but also to make sure I was within a trust who care about their people.
I originally came here as a paramedic, and like I said, the elderly population, it wasn't what I was expecting with the trauma work, but with cardiac conditions and the more medical conditions, that I was quite involved with that. And the Vern has been a big opportunity for me to expand my knowledge, and it's also helped me with my career, because I'm now going down the management line. So it's now given me that opening that I possibly wouldn't have had before.
So what made you choose the prison environment to be an occupational therapist?
So as an occupational therapist, I truly believe that every person, no matter who they are, where they come from, what they've done, has a right to engagement in meaningful and purposeful activity and occupation, whatever environment they are in. This particular job really interested me because I get to use all of what I know as an occupational therapist, and I get the challenge of using myself as a therapeutic tool. I don't have maybe some of the luxuries that I might have had in previous jobs where I've got all this equipment, all these tools. I'm really using just me, and that challenge is really exciting.
So what's your favourite thing about your job here?
Working together with my colleagues is one of the best things that I love here. Although you think pharmacy can be quite unnerving. I've worked in the community for many years, 20 years or more, fairly recent to the prison, and it's a very nice, secure environment. It really is. And every day, as much as we do morning meds and afternoon meds, that kind of thing, that is a set routine. But there's so many different things, there is still a variety in the day.
And would you recommend the apprenticeship route to other people?
Oh yeah, 100%. Being paid whilst learning and being able to work your way up and build a career, 100%.
I'm quite able to do my work in an autonomous way. Sometimes that's a challenge though, because you're the only nurse here sometimes, and it's quite a pressure. And the mixture as well. So you're a paramedic, stroke counsellor, stroke friend to the patients. It is difficult, but I really enjoy it.
Oxley's has been a big change, getting used to their way they do things. So we've had to adapt within the prison with that, but it's made things easier. They've got the national policies, so you can tap into those. They've had other prisons before, so you can tap into what the other prisons have used and bring that on board, as well as our existing ones. So I think with Oxley's coming into the southwest, we've been able to share some of the stuff we've had with wider Oxley's, and we've also had that back. So we've had that network of support both ways.
The biggest challenge is going to be finding a way of working which suits not only the prisoners and who will be then my patients, but the entirety of the service of the prison. So the way that healthcare work may be different, or is different, quite rightly so, from the way that potentially the prison staff work, and that thought process is naturally different.
I love working in the prison, particularly in the southwest. We have the best of everything. We have the beautiful towns, we have the coastline, we have the countryside. Every day is a different day weather-wise when you come in, sometimes not quite so nice, but it's always a new day and a different day. And it's the same working within the prison. You don't know what you're going to come into on a daily basis, and I thrive on that challenge.
Great film there, and thanks to everyone down at the Vern for their kind hospitality. It looks beautiful down there. Next up, we travel to Taunton in Somerset to meet Paul O'Sullivan, the Head of Health and Justice at NHS England South West. Here's what he had to say.
What's the vision for prisons in the southwest now that Oxley's are the main healthcare provider there?
So our ambition has always been to improve the health and care and health outcomes for the people in our prisons in the southwest. But we recognise that's both those two things together. So optimising access to healthcare for people in our prison may be, for some, that's the first time they've had the opportunity to really secure timely access to dental care, GP or mental health care appropriate to their needs.
You mentioned health outcomes. What's the current situation with health outcomes within prisons that needs to improve?
We know that people coming into prison experience some of the poorest health outcomes in our population, either because of lifestyle choices, their experience of access to healthcare in the past, and perhaps prior to prison, the crisis or the traumas those people have experienced that in turn impacts on their physical and mental health and their peer network and social engagement. So we have the opportunity, I believe, of when people come into prison to understand their needs and respond to those appropriately and provide that access to healthcare, and wherever possible to use that period of time within prison to provide them with healthcare that they would benefit from and raise their health outcomes. And I think that also speaks to a really important point. We see that time in prison as part of that person's life journey, life experience. And what will be important for Oxleys is that they can work as part of that pathway, pre-custody. How do they understand what's happened before that person came into prison? But importantly, post-custody, how do we prepare people for release? And how do we use the other services that we, NHS England Commission, Reconnect, to assertively connect those people to ongoing healthcare in their return to community? So if Oxleys are able to engage people in addressing their addiction needs, dealing with substance use, in addressing their mental health needs or the physical health needs, particularly for the older prison population we've got, increased long-term conditions and the need to manage those long-term conditions. If you've been able to start people on a course of treatment, perhaps for the first time, as I say, it's really important that Oxleys are critical then in supporting that process to enable that person to continue that ongoing health care, because we know in turn, of course, that some of those health drivers may lead people to a further period of crisis and crime unless they're able to get the support and intervention they need post-custody as well as whilst they're in prison.
So how does this is a trauma-informed care approach, how does that work in that process?
And one of the great attractions for the Oxleys role is, of course, that experience of delivering a trauma-informed care approach in South East and in London prisons. And so we're excited to see how Oxleys can support not just their own healthcare staff in adopting a trauma-informed approach, but supporting their prison-employed colleagues, HMPPS colleagues, to understand, recognise prisoners' behaviours and how they may be linked to that earlier period of trauma, and respond accordingly, if you like, and adopt those approaches in our responses to the management of those prisoners and support for those prisoners through that. And I know that the Oxleys have already been talking to our prison group directors and governors, sharing some of the material that's previously been developed elsewhere, ISIS for example, to help that shared and mutual understanding. And it sings to that point that I was saying around that, exactly that, the whole regime adopting that approach to determine those health outcomes, complementing the specific access to healthcare. And we have plans underway to where we've been able to screen and identify somebody who have neurodiverse needs. How do we equip them with their passport, if you like, to enable them to move between different services or settings? For example, if they're moved from a Category B prison to a Category C prison, onward release into community, to take that passport with them so that their needs continue to be understood without them having to repeat their story.
I wanted to talk about the Verne actually, because it's my first visit there yesterday, and I thought it was a phenomenal place, apart from the scenery and the history. But I know that they've been doing a lot of work around social care. What's been driving that?
It's clear that just as in the wider community, people are in need of increased personal care and social care. Sometimes that's additionally specific health care, but largely it's personal and social care. And so we've worked with HMPPS, with Oxley's, and with Dorset Local Authority to bring together a social care unit, as it were, where people can get their social care needs met within an environment that's conducive to that, where their long-term care needs can be better supported, the environment's conducive to that, and the regime accords to their particular needs. That helps for us and for Oxley's in also reducing, ideally, the amount of time that people might spend unnecessarily in hospital. Once they've had their healthcare needs met and they're ready for discharge, very often, as we know in the wider population, people are delayed in their discharge because of the health and social care needs not being able to be met. This facility is giving us the ability to address that, making better use of resources, better use of not tying up officer time, standing by a hospital bed, and Oxley's able to care for that people within their environment.
One of the things I wanted to ask you about was I've noticed visiting prisons, nearly everybody I ask, you know, how did you get into this line of work? And many say they didn't know about it originally, but they stumbled across it by accident, but that they would never go back now to mainstream healthcare, that they find it so rewarding. Why do you think that is?
Well, it's an interesting observation, and I know certainly talking to my own team and to Oxley's team, they've been really keen to be present at recruitment fairs, to do whatever they can to engage with students, to promote the fact that health and justice is a setting in which there is an opportunity for future practice. And what we hear from this is in that practice, as challenging as the environment might be, it gives an opportunity to practice their skills across a range of physical, mental health, and social and substance misuse conditions. So there's a variety, a diversity to the work, and to some extent there's a more autonomy in the practice the professionals get within that environment. And I think, again, the very challenging nature of it is both the high challenge, high reward, and people really then respond to that, of being able to feel that they're making a significant contribution to people who've perhaps had poor experience of healthcare in the past prior to then coming into prison, to make a difference to that people. And of course, that's why we come to work, isn't it? To make a difference. And that's what motivates and keeps people thinking, this is an environment in which I can make a difference.
And I've noticed there's a really good working relationship between the prison staff, so HMPPS staff, and Oxley's healthcare teams. They work really well together, and I see they share a lot of information, they share a lot of knowledge and learning. Is that your experience across the Southwest? That's generally how things are?
What we're seeing is a very positive relationship, which of course, go back to what I said originally around the ambition, that the healthcare staff and the prison staff are working as one, as a combined team, in the interests of that prison population, to promote their health needs, but to create that wider opportunity to improve those life chances and life opportunities for those people.
And what would you say to someone who was currently in South East London working for Oxley's and seeing our footage and scenery and thinking, that looks nice? What would you say to them about working in the Southwest?
One of the great attractions for us in NHS England of engaging with Oxley's is precisely that ability to share and learn practice between South East London and the Southwest, and being able to, how do we rapidly adopt innovations and good practice that are happening in those three different localities, and share the best of what's going on. And in that respect, I think whilst the geographical distance is there, therefore I would absolutely encourage that mobility, and what that can provide by way of career development for people in moving between those different settings and environments. Clearly, Southwest offers a most beautiful physical environment, why wouldn't I say that? But that also can belie a diversity of challenge and need. You know, we do have, as in London, significant areas of deprivation and challenges that we then see coming through our prison environment. So the work won't be without a challenge. In fact, again, it will offer that reward as a result of those challenges too.
Thanks, Paul, for taking the time to speak to us. Lastly, as you all know, nothing can ever operate smoothly without a great infrastructure running in the background. We went back down to Taunton to meet the Southwest IT team and spoke to them about what it was like to completely overhaul the computer systems across numerous prisons in so many different places.
So we're in the Taunton hub today. How long have you been working here for Oxley's?
So I came across to Oxley's when the prison contract was moved to Oxley's from our previous provider, and we've been in the Taunton hub since April of this year. So we finally got a home in the southwest, which is obviously well appreciated, which means that we can do all the stuff we need to do to support the prisons. So in the southwest prisons, we have a dedicated IT team that supports all of the prisons across Devon, Dorset and the Bristol cluster. And so we look after all of those prisons as basically a satellite team to the wider ICT team that's based up in Brackenhouse in Dartford. Some of the challenges we have are getting into the prisons in the first place. Of course, they're all secure environments. If we're bringing in new technology, we have to make sure that it's security cleared, that we can bring it in without issue, and obviously that we can work with the teams working in the prisons to make sure that everything works as they need it, because obviously access can be difficult at times.
Some of the infrastructure is a bit old, some of the buildings are a bit old, so we tend to have to think on our feet when we get to the sites, when there's issues with, say, networking, cabling, etc. We usually find a way to get resolutions and to get things fixed and working correctly.
Last year we had to switch out the whole of the IT infrastructure from the previous provider. So over the course of a couple of weekends, we got all sites up and running onto the new Oxley's network, which is obviously giving them all new equipment so that they can obviously get the best IT to be able to allow them to do their job. So we have 10 prisons down here in the southwest. So we've got 3 in Devon, 3 in Dorset, and then there's 4 in the Bristol cluster. So it's quite a spread.
So how do you manage to cover all of them?
Yeah, so I have a team down here of engineers, and generally they have an area that they cover. Ideally, we can try and support stuff remotely, but when needed, we have to go out to site. So we do end up doing quite a bit of driving around to get to the sites.
I was working in a independent giftware store in the South Bank in London, which was quite fun, but there wasn't a lot of room for growth, I would say. So I was looking for a role in IT because I've always enjoyed doing IT and tinkering with computers and stuff. So I saw the opening here in Oxley's. So I applied because I always wanted to practice IT on a sort of commercial level and in a more professional environment as well. So yeah, I applied and I was successful.
What's the difference between working in London and living in London as you used to, and working and living in the southwest area?
I think the pace is a bit slower in the southwest, and I think people are a bit more easier going, as it were. Obviously, everyone has their problems and their issues and whatever, but I just find I find it more calming in the west. And at the weekends, there's obviously lots of countryside and lots of places to visit and lots of walks and bike riding, and it's just a lot more outdoor activities. It's just at your doorstep.
So in the southwest, obviously you've got big cities like Bristol and Exeter, but you've also got amazing access to countryside. Obviously lots of our prisons are in the countryside. You've also got amazing access to Wales. So if you're into kind of, walking, any kind of outdoor activities, it's a really great place to live.
When I first moved here, I was quite surprised as to how sort of chilled out it was here. Whereas in London, a lot of people don't have time for a lot of things really. But even here, if you were to go to a cafe or somewhere and just chat to the people in the shop, they have a lot of time for you.
What would you say if anyone, say in South East London, was thinking of a change of scenery to come down here and work? What would you say to them?
I would say absolutely give it a try. We've got an amazing hub here in Taunton, which has a hot desking area for anyone who works for Oxley's. So come down and work. You're more than welcome.
Overall, I've enjoyed my experience here, and I do plan on staying here as long as I can. But yeah, I do miss London sometimes because I've got my friends and family there, but I'm glad I made the move here because, yeah, it's quite a nice place to live and work.
What a great team down there. So that's it for this special Southwest edition of Oxwide. A big thank you for everyone who helped get this together, and sorry it's taken so long to get released, but we hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, goodbye.